Hello, students. Hopefully the unpleasantness of last weekend has passed and we will have a glitch-free next 3 weeks or however long this semester goes. Okay, so I'm going to go over today's quiz. Well, no, it wasn't today's quiz. The quiz of a few days ago on irony and the two Kate Chopin stories. Okay, so the first question, I gave you a scenario. Gloria was upset to find that a roommate went on a date with her ex. Gloria confronts her roommate, and because she's so witty, she says something ironic. Which of the following could be that statement? Okay, so in this one, I was asking about verbal irony. Verbal irony meaning basically saying the opposite of what you mean. And so the opposite of what she means is, no, it doesn't bother me at all. You took Darren to the Angus barn. It was our favorite restaurant, and it has pained me to think that he had no compelling reason to go there after we broke up. So of course she means the opposite of that. She is exceptionally bothered that they would go to that restaurant. Okay, by the way, it is a surprise that they would still be talking, right? That Gloria would still talk to her roommate after going out with the ex-boyfriend. But hey, creative liberties, right? Okay, so yeah, and I think the verbal irony is kind of the most common that we run across. Sometimes people refer to it as sarcasm. Sarcasm really doesn't mean that. Of course, language changes and terms change their meaning over time through usage. But you know, traditionally, going back a ways, irony is that term for it, meaning saying something that means the opposite of what you meant. Sarcasm more is about abrasiveness, about having that kind of abrasive language in your talk. But it is kind of interesting how sarcasm has sort of taken on kind of an ironic meaning. And of course, people have used ironic in all sorts of ways. I mentioned the Alanis Morissette song in one of the next quiz question, I think it is. And so yeah, that term irony, of course, is one of the most misused terms, in addition to literally, right? Literally and ironic are kind of the most, I think, the terms I think bother English teachers the most and how they're misused. All right, so let's move on to question number 2. And that was the one about Alanis Morissette. She famously wrote a song called Isn't It Ironic, featuring many situations that were unfortunate but not really ironic. Oh, by the way, I think that she's updated that song with actual ironic situations worth looking into. I'll definitely post a link to it if I remember to look for it. So why does rain clouds on your wedding day fail as an example of an ironic situation? Okay, so the question is getting at situational irony. That is, when the exact opposite of what you expect happens. Now, some students in the quiz mentioned that no one expects rain on their wedding day, but I don't think that's really accurate. They don't hope for rain. You know, they hope that it's a non-rainy day, it's a sunny day, but it's not something like they typically don't expect it. You know, maybe here's how I think that could work. In an extra credit extra credit option, I'll have you try to revise Morissette's song. But here's how I think you can make this work. Is if the couple was so determined to have a rain-free wedding that they did all sorts of things to avoid rain. They went to the spot in the world that has the least amount of rainfall. They found the day that has the least amount of rainfall historically, and they did all these kind of things. Maybe then you could consider it ironic. It still doesn't have much of an edge to it. So just something to think about. By the way, I'll come back to this when I go over the extra credit toward the last half of the video. All right, so let's look at the third one. This third one was relating to dramatic irony. So Kate Chopin's Story of an Hour ends with the doctor's conclusion that Louise Mallard, quote, died of heart disease of joy that kills. And so the question is, how is this an example of dramatic irony? So with dramatic irony, there's that discrepancy between what readers know and what characters know. And of course, readers know that she did not die of joy there at the end. You know, she died because assume it's because her expectation of a life of freedom, that newfound expectation that she would live a long life to herself without someone else's will being exerted on her, was robbed from her. So it's actually sorrow that causes her death. And maybe sorrow doesn't get right at it, but it's close to it. It's certainly not joy, though. And because readers know we were in that room with Mrs. Mallard, we know that joy that she had. We're in her head, right, when she is feeling it. Because we know this, we know that the doctor is off base, because the doctor, could not have known that that she had that reaction. Okay, so again, is dramatic irony is when readers know something that characters don't. The book also talks about Diani. Also talks about ironic vision, and that's when basically a sort of a spirit of irony pervades a work. Huckleberry Finn, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain is one of the examples he uses, and in that one, Mark Twain chooses basically an ignorant narrator. Huck Finn has no education. He's river smart. He's sharp, but he doesn't have any education, and so he's saying things all the time that he doesn't understand the humor, but readers do. Also, the central action, the climax of Huckleberry Finn. That's when Huckleberry Finn, he's about to turn in Jim, about to reveal that Jim is an escaped slave, and then he basically writes a letter, and he says that no, he tears up the letter that he writes, and he basically says, I'm going to hell. He thinks he's going to hell by freeing Jim. He thinks that. He has that kind of mentality. Readers, of course, know that that is actually the best thing he could do. That he is actually, basically stepping up for his friend is the best thing he can do. So he thinks he's going to hell, but we know that he's doing the best thing possible. So there's, again, that discrepancy between what readers know and what he knows. Okay. And that spirit pervades Huckleberry Finn. All right, so let me move on to, let's see here. Actually, there was a question about Desiree's baby. Let me not forget that one. What could be considered ironic about Desiree's baby's last paragraph? And that's the contents of the letter. Okay, so the possibilities were he found his real name was not Armand. That was the dog's name. That was, of course, not true. Armand considered his mother a saint, and her racism was shocking. Also not true. Armand raised in a French-speaking household, couldn't read English. So of course all those were not accurate. The one accurate one was Armand sent Desiree away because he thought she was the one with the African American ancestry. The contents of the letter reveal that he is the one who has that African American racial identity, and of course that means he was subject to enslavement. So yes, so that's the ironic situation there. Okay, again, the opposite of what a character expects. Okay, let's see here. So I'm going to move on to the extra credit. I'm going to open this extra credit right now. So the extra credit opportunities was hidden, but I'm going to open it right now. Okay. Sorry. Everything's taking a little time here. Okay, so the extra credit opportunities you'll find in the content area now. And the one I'm going to go over right now is number 3, option number 3. So you could, of course, look on with me if you'd like. So it reads basically, in the quiz on irony in the 2 Chopin stories, I referred to Alanis Morissette's song Ironic, which is known for its list of mostly non-ironic situations. By the way, one student in the past, one past student, he said, pretty wittily, I thought that the song itself is ironic because it's titled Ironic, but it doesn't really have any ironic situations in it. So there's the irony, which is pretty ingenious, I thought. So let me one way I think of situational irony, that's the irony of circumstance, can be thought of as a coincidence with attitude. My favorite story is this one about my friend Kevin, which I retell here. So Kevin, he had been basically teasing fate in Greenville. You know, if you leave a bike unlocked, you can count on it being stolen. And so he was basically riding all around town, leaving his bike unlocked week after week, and we were just kind of like, "Whoa, that's buddy, you're tempting fate here. You need to get a lock." And let's see here. So, yeah, day after day he did this, but one day he decided, okay, I've pushed my luck long enough. I'm gonna go to Kmart and get a lock. So he pedals out to Kmart, parks his bike out front, goes in, gets the U-lock, comes out, U-lock in his hand, and of course the ending writes itself, right? That he finds out that his bike was stolen when he was getting his lock. So yeah, that's, I think, one of my favorite real life examples of irony. Let's see here. So yeah, and I think in those kind of situations, that it almost comes across like God is a prankster, sort of impish, like playing with our lives and that sort of thing. And so I think Kevin certainly thought that way during that moment. So basically, the extra credit is pretty easy. Just take one of Morissette's supposedly ironic situations and make it ironic. That's it. Just do one. Yeah, don't overload me. Just do one. Let's look at some of these other ones. One thing I want you guys to think about is we're ending our short story run, and we kind of, and this happens oftentimes with me because I'm so consumed with the day to day, I kind of forget to pull back and look at the big picture. So so I do want you guys to think about what are the purposes of storytelling. I mean, the purposes are many, of course, but really let's think about what purpose does storytelling have in our lives. One thing that's kind of interesting is my daughter, she's in 3rd grade now, well, rising up to the 3rd grade, and she writes stories all the time. She's encouraged in class to write stories. Even math problems she works through with stories. And what I've noticed from students is students say that oftentimes they don't really write many stories after the kind of primary school, that later on in high school they quit writing stories. And it's kind of funny that there's that drop off, and I guess it's an assumption that storytelling is not really that important, or it's maybe not academically important. But I would really reject that. I think that stories are one of the most common forms of expression, or shapes that expression takes. And so one thing I want to talk about is, with the first extra credit possibility, is the way storytelling is a way to kind of bring community together and to make connections among people, to provide support for each other. And so I tell, this, in the description of the extra credit, I talk about how when one tells a painful story to another person, often what that person gets is not just a nod, a hug, they get a return story. It happens often, a lot of times. Most times when I have students do this experiment, almost everybody who does the experiment gets a story in return. And basically the point of those stories is, you are not alone, you can persevere, I went through this, I made it through, and I'm okay, you can too. So they have this these underlying points to those stories. Now, I also acknowledge that sometimes storytelling is not so supportive. That's not really the intention. Sometimes it's more of a competition. If you get around the right kind of people, maybe the wrong kind of people, but if you tell a story, oftentimes not what you get is a return story, but the purpose of that return story is not to support you, is to beat you. That is to tell a story that's better than yours. Maybe it's of a worse experience, of a more extreme experience in some way. And so, and if you're with a number of people who do this kind of thing, it can come into basically a game of one-upsmanship as one person tells a story and another person tells a story, and it just builds and builds. It can be fascinating to be a part of that. So that's enough. That's a lot of preamble, I know. Now go out and tell somebody a story. Observe their reactions while you tell it, and then listen up. Chances are they're going to tell you a return story. Listen up, clearly listen to that story, because you don't need to write all this stuff down. You got to do a summary of your story, summary of the return story, and then a little bit of reflection. And that's basically, let's see here. I describe it in the extra credit opportunity. The final step is recording all this and drawing conclusions. Write down both the story you told and the story that was told to you. Think about the kind of story you told. Was it sad, angry, funny, or serious? What triggered the new story? What was your listener's intention telling the return story? And yeah, I'll basically just add these to the quiz grade numerator. Quiz grade is depicted as a fraction, so I'll go to that top part of that fraction. The second one is about plot. So I don't know if you remember this, but you guys took a quiz on Guest of a Nation, and I gave you basically 4 random situations, random things happening. And you guys, I asked you, was this a plot, or why does it fail as a plot? And most of you nailed it, because these things don't seem to have any relation to each other, no causal relationship between the 4 things. So the 4 things were: a man stops at a stoplight, a woman works on her office computer, a child sits on a swing, and a politician speaks before a raucous crowd. Now this is going to require a lot of creativity. And so what the challenge would be to make those 4 different things into a plot. So try to work on establishing that cause and effect. You can definitely use creative liberties. You can add other kinds of actions to basically make the connections between them and so on. So have fun with it. Get some extra credit. That's worth 5 points possible in that quiz category. Okay, let's see. I already talked about number 3. Oh, yeah. And so the next one is the Alanis Morissette one. Then skipping past that one, we'll go to the one on Edgar Allan Poe. I basically included 2 passages from Poe. Mark Twain said that Poe should only be read on salary. That is, you should only read Poe if you're being paid to read Poe. And one of his problems was with his style. Poe uses a lot of Latinate words, a lot of words that end in ious or ment or tion. He's basically noun-dependent kind of words. You can see here in The Fall of the House of Usher, you've got impetuous, tempestuous, alterations. Let's see here, gaseous exhalation, terrestrial objects. And then the one on the other Fall of the House of Usher passage, you have cadaverousness. Let's see here, where's another one? Formation, inordinate expansion, countenance. So basically this would be to take Poe's abstract Latinate language, his writerly tendency, his convoluted sentence structure, his long, convoluted meaning very long and twisty, his long versus brief sentence length. You take those different qualities of Poe and you convert it to concrete Anglo-Saxon diction, colloquial word choice, and then direct sentence structure, shorter direct sentence structure, and brief sentence length, right? So yeah, have fun with that one. So you would be revising one of those two paragraphs, okay, for that one. Let's see here, and that would be another 5-pointer, possible 5-pointer. And option number, I think it's number 5 at this point, is a question on A&P. So there's a question on A&P, and it's on page 37. So I'm going to go track that down and read it real quick. Okay, so the question is, on page 37, look back to the story's climactic point in which Sammy says, "I quit." Are there other passages of description, dialogue, or action that you see as closely related to this one? I've never been able to quite make sense of what that question, or how to answer that question. So what I'll do is leave that to you guys. It perplexes me, but hey, maybe some of you have a better handle on it. Yeah, so how does, when he says "I quit," how does that relate to something else in that story? And yeah, so good luck with that one. All right. And let's see, the last one. Oh, okay. So the last one I'm not quite ready to talk about yet because it's about Emily Dickinson's poetry, and we haven't really got to that yet. So, well, I'll bring that one up, go into that one in a little bit more detail next week. All right. Well, I hope you guys will take me up on some of these extra credit opportunities. I think you can have a lot of fun with them. And take care. Good luck.